when does it make sense for an immigrant to say, I want to get a mortgage or I want to rent? How does this work? Knowing what you know now with your experience.
Somebody coming from Nigeria to stay in your house, you need to accept that this person will be in your house minimum 3 months. A real estate agent will tell you that the best time to buy is now.
If you are married with kids, buying is not a matter of will I buy, it's a matter of when will I buy. Some women might not be comfortable staying in a rented apartment for long, especially when they start associating with fellow Nigerian women who will say, come to my house, they go to somebody's house, look around and be like, wow, what is this person doing that you cannot do?
Knowing what I know now, I would say personally, this is for me, I would buy. I would buy a home. I would do all of the things because I don't know what tomorrow holds.
Remember, you are building equity based on the fact that you assume that the value of the houses will appreciate, not depreciate. You're playing a game, you're gambling. The difference between my renting and the person that is paying mortgage, if I am investing that money, there is a high chance that you will build way more capital. It is not a given that because you are building equity, in quote, with your own house and mortgage that you are making money. There's a high chance you might not be.
Emeka, I would like you to also respond to that same scenario. And once you respond, I would also follow up with a question. And as Chibag was speaking, I also have some questions on this mortgage versus rent thing. And I think it's very important to see, we know when does it make sense to do that. But in the 4,000 one, and what's your own thoughts on that?
Well, everything Chibike said is on point. In my perspective, $4,000 gross is something, you know, I'm just gonna say it's something your wife should be making, you know. That's money, or money you make from a part-time job. You know, as a Nigerian, I don't know about other people. Everything Chibike said about Caucasians and other, it's true. You know, they get to a certain point and they're like, wow. As a Nigerian, the black tax thing is real. Whether you, even if you're the only son and your father is rich in Nigeria, you have cousins and, you know, all kinds of extended family people that are making demands on that income. So $4,000 gross is about $28,000 after taxes. So when you take out your rent will take at least 50% of that. Even if it's one bedroom apartment you live in, your rent will take half of that. So if you're earning that, if that's your household income, I don't think you will struggle, except your partner has something that is equivalent, brings in another $4,000 gross, so that at the end of the month, after taxes, both of you are getting about $5,000. You should be fine with that, you know. You should live a relatively, you know, good lifestyle with that. You won't be like you won't be buying stuff on Amazon, skip the dishes and things like that. But you should be comfortable. Now the question is, are you going to be able to save to buy your own home? I don't think. I mean, you can, but it will take you a while, especially if you have kids. Because those kids, okay, if you have kids, depending on their age, because your income is that low, they should be getting the maximum CCB, depending on the age bracket there. And if they are newborns, they will get about $600 a month from the government. So if you have two, that's another $1,200 added onto your net family income, which should give you a decent boost. And I mean, that should cover groceries for those kids. If you are spending for a family of 4, you're aiming to spend say $2,000 a month on groceries. You should be able to manage. It's not great, but you should be able to manage that. My mother would say, "No, we didn't come to the earth to eat." So you should be. But you know, children, they can wake up in the middle of the night and say they want to eat, and you have to give them, because God forbid they go to school and say, "Oh, we don't usually get food at home." You're in trouble. That's money that you're trying to save. You will go and pay it to a lawyer. Yes. So 4K, I mean, for a start, for you, you can make that. While if say I have someone that comes to Canada from Nigeria and I keep them in my house and they go out and they get a job that pays 48K per annum, I'll tell them to take it. That should, tide them for the next three, because we understand that when someone, people don't understand when they ask, oh, can I stay in your house? I don't think they understand what that the demand that they are making on you. Because that question is not like, oh, okay, one weekend thing. Everybody knows this. Shiba, I can confirm. Somebody coming from Nigeria to stay in your house, you need to accept that this person will be in your house minimum 3 months. Like the minimum. Like, and you should minimum 3 months, then you are preparing yourself for 6 months. A few years ago, like 5-7 years ago, you were preparing for like a month because you are sure the person will get a job in, say, 2 weeks' time. And then after 2 weeks, they earn the first paycheck. You can, help them, and another month they keep their income so they can, find down payment, security deposit, and all of that. But now the jobs are drying up. There's more people than jobs. So when you bring in someone and they stay with you, be prepared to at least, except, all things being equal, you should be able to keep them for 6 months. Now, imagine you, man, woman, 2 kids, and you're bringing in man, woman, 2 kids. How much is your income? You that is managing, you're just pretending to be rich and living your life, quietly. Everybody's looking at you and saying, wow, this guy is balling. And then you add this on top of that. That just stretches you, whether you like it, except you're making 15K after taxes, then you don't mind. I remember that when I came, I stayed with this man, him, his wife, and one daughter, gave me a room in his house, Jacob, and he housed me for 3 months. Then groceries were just, very cheap, because he told me the least thing you can give anybody in Canada is food. Today, we can't say that. Nobody can say that now, So things have changed a lot, so that $4,000 a month, even though it is 4 million naira, by the time you take out tax and you spend it in dollar, it's not a lot left. Your partner needs to go and get something, and then you need to keep looking and bringing it up to like 80,000. You need to double that to live comfortably.
Thank you for that. That's very insightful, and it gives more context, especially for people who are back home in Nigeria and who will carry their calculators and be doing the math. The math, the simple multiplication that you're doing has real life consequences in a different place. And that takes me to my question, Emeka. Let me start with you. And I think Chibak has already answered that, but I maybe can also add to it after you answer. So, knowing what you know now, how would you approach this debate of to mortgage or to rent? And in when is it suitable, and when does it make sense for an immigrant to say, I want to get a mortgage or I want to rent? How does this work? Knowing what you know now with your experience.
Well, wow, that's a simple question, but it's very complicated in the sense that so when in 2016, let's use a benchmark. In 2016, I paid $350 for a 2-bedroom apartment I was sharing, $700 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So I think that the government, let me phrase this properly so it doesn't look like criticism. The government miscalculated with their immigration thing. Now they kind of messed the market up. From 2016, when I came, it made sense to buy a house. If you bought that apartment, then you wouldn't pay $700 in mortgages, because the person who you are renting from who was charging $700 was making, no matter how small, they were paying less to be able to charge that. Today, a 2-bedroom apartment is easily $1,700, $2,000, easily. Now, the government, because of the miscalculation it has made, has overstretched itself. So that right now, do you want to go and buy a house when the government is saying, there's rumors of equity tax? That's if you sell this property, the government is waiting to say, hey, we want a part of that. If that happens, and now even property values, they go up, they go down, they are just all over the place because there's just too many people chasing too few properties. So a real estate agent will tell you that the best time to buy is now, right? So if you have the down payment, it might make sense to buy a house now, but everything depends on your taste. Everything is just up to your taste. When you think about this, I had another conversation with a guy. I like, having diverse and opposing conversations. One, on the one hand, said it doesn't make sense to buy because, the government and its equity tax and the expense that you do and this and that, it's okay to rent. When I'm done renting, I can go back to, I don't have to worry about maintenance and all of those things, which makes sense. On the other hand, one says, well, whether I rent or I buy, I'm paying something. So would I rather help myself build my own equity or help someone else build their equity? When you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense to build your own equity. But then after building your equity and the government is on one side saying, hello, can we have some, is it worth it? So it's more like a personal decision. What we can do here is to tell you the risks of renting and the risks of buying. If you rent and suddenly the government wakes up one day, decides to fix everything, are you going to be happy that you're losing out on the appreciation of the property you didn't have? And whether it appreciates or not, your landlord will still increase your rent. Rent never goes down. It's always going up. When interest rate as a buyer, if it falls, depending on whether you have a fixed or a variable. Some people are quite good. If you have a good bank agent, they will tell you, they will use banking projections to advise you to go fixed or variable. They can tell you variable might be high for you now, but take it because by next year, the bank, our analysts are predicting that this and this and that with the government, this and this and that. You might be strong-headed, you refuse and you go and take a fixed rate. By next year, the government does something and the rates drop. You are stuck in the fixed rate that you are. You can't go back. Or they can tell you, take a 3-year fixed. In the next 3 years, the inflation will be under control. Interest rates will drop. When interest rates drop, your mortgage payment drops. Your landlord doesn't care. They'll still charge you rent. Depending on how long they've had the rent, they can even say, oh, we're increasing your rent, which is why some provinces are saying, oh, you can't just increase rent. You have to have a certain time limit and you can't increase above this percentage, things like that. So the government that created the problem is on one hand trying to influence how people react to the problem they created. So all of these things, knowing what I know now, I would say personally, this is for me, I would buy. I would buy a home. I would do all of the things because I don't know what tomorrow holds. But if whatever happens tomorrow happens, it is me and my house, not me and my landlord's house. So either way, I have to have a roof over my head. So yeah, I will buy.
Oh, thanks for that. Shibak, your own take on that.
Okay, so I think I will approach it from, first of all, I am speaking as a Nigerian immigrant in Canada. I'm not speaking generically. So that's the bias with which I'm analyzing this. So I'll start with the first point. Before I decide, in this discussion of should you buy or rent, here's one variable that plays a very critical part to that. What is your marital status? And somebody will say, what does that mean? If you are single as a man, you can make straightforward decisions, calculate it very, very dispassionately, do your pros and cons, and land at whatever decision you think makes sense. But when you are married, as a Nigerian immigrant, married to probably a Nigerian woman with kids, that decision might not necessarily lie in your hands. And I use myself as an example. Because when I talked about renting, when I told my wife that, listen, I don't want us to rent for more than 1 year. I don't want to be paying somebody rent. Whatever I will pay in rent is gone. I would rather be paying mortgage, which is building equity and credit for myself. And that largely still remains what I will advise anybody. But, you know, at that point, I was doing a job that gave me confidence to say, I did my calculations with that job. Anyhow, I feel pay my rent, I feel pay my mortgage, and I'll still be okay to support my family. But some might not be in that situation. And if you are married to a woman who is saying, I beg, I don't want to be living in this rented. This place there's no space. I don't have my own wardrobe. Where will my luggages be? My children are running around all over the place. Some women might not be comfortable staying in a rented apartment for long, especially when they start associating with fellow Nigerian women who will say, come to my house. They go to somebody's house, look around and be like, wow, what is this person doing that you cannot do? If these people are renting it, is it not in this same Canada area? By the time they give you that pressure, you instinctively start saying, oh yeah, now let's start looking. So, and trust bankers, they'll find a way to squeeze the analysis to tell you that, oh no, it can fit in. By the time they fit you in, give you the house, give you keys, and your bills start landing, you now see that you are struggling to keep your head above water. So, your marital status is critical to that decision. If you are married with kids, you are more likely to lean towards buying earlier than most people would. So buying is not a matter of will I buy, it's a matter of when will I buy. It's not if I will buy. So that's one point. The second point is, what is the status of your extended family? If you have an extended family, right? You have in-laws, you have your own parents. You know that you have siblings, both sides, both siblings of the wife, siblings of the man. Let's even say you are still single, but you have parents and you have siblings. The moment you land and stabilize, whatever stability means for you, which is maybe you have rented for a while, you have small savings in your pocket, you have started sending money back home, your younger siblings will start pushing, or without even pushing, you will start saying, my next project is, how do I bring these people over? And if you bring them over, they will not stay under the bridge now. They will stay in the house. If you say you want to bring your parents over, if you are lucky to have your parents alive, that lineup of bringing them means they'll come to the house and stay. So having an extended family, right, pushes that pressure to buy sooner than you would have, especially in comparison to your finances. Maybe if you didn't have that pressure, you would have said, let me rent for like 3-4 years, have some serious savings. But when you have that family, the pressure is like, after a year of settling, you're like, okay, let me buy a house now that I feel like I can afford it. So that by the next 2-3 years, we'll start saying who is coming, who is not coming. Let's start drawing the timetable of people that will come and when they will come. So that's also critical to that plan. Am I buying or am I renting? Another thing also that's also important is, how financially literate are you? Now, let me put that statement in context. A lot of people say, oh, there's a straight line argument for this rent or buy. And I was part of the team that was strictly, It's common sense now. Buying makes more sense. You are saving equity for yourself. You are this, you are that. But let me tell you something. If my rent is 1,004 every month, if my rent and my utilities cost me 1,450 every month, and I buy a house or I take a mortgage, I must have put down at least 5% on that house. So let's say that house is 400,000 and I put 5% down. How much is that? 5% of 400,000 is what? 20,000. Is that not? 20,000. So that is 20,000 cash that you are giving bank to hold. Right? Now, and there's a chance that by the time your bills land in the month, you're spending close to, let me be a conservative, you're spending close to 2,005 every month for rent and utilities. Right? Now, yes, you are building equity. That's fine. It's good to build equity, but remember, you are building equity based on the fact that you assume that the value of the houses will appreciate, not depreciate. You're playing a game, you're gambling. And most of the time, it does work out on the average that what you bought it is not the value it will be 5 years after when you are doing your remortgaging and you want to pull equity. That's true. But here's where that financial literacy comes in. Let us say that you take that 20,000. If two of us together in 1 year on everything concerning housing, the person that is renting on my first year of rent, I just want you to put the maths together. On my first year of rent, and my house is worth 400,000, and I put down 5%, and I'm paying 2,005 every month, right? That means in 10 months, my expenses will be what? 25,000 plus the 20,000 down payment that I gave bank. So everything concerning house and utilities has already cost me 45,000 in 10 months for that first year, right? If I'm just renting at 1,450, 10 months will cost me 14,500. What is the net difference? You're looking at, is it not almost 10,000 or so? I don't know. Yeah, close to, it's okay. Let's just put it at an average, maybe 10,000. If you put in 10,000 in a let's say S&P 500 at an averaged out interest of 7% per annum, there's a high chance that after 5 years, that equity that Oga house owner has built, you may have made it by aggressively investing your savings in an S&P 500, or you throw your money with Berkshire Hathaway. Just throw it there. Every month, that 1,000 that you would have used to pay extra utilities, you throw it in Berkshire Hathaway. I was listening to a podcast and he said something about the rule of 72. He says any money you invest, every 7 years, that money doubles. And it continues to double every 7 years. So there's a chance that if I am financially literate and I am disciplined and I'm saying the difference between what I make, the difference between my renting and the person that is paying mortgage, if I am investing that money, there is a high chance that you will build way more capital than the person who is renting. So that's why I'm asking, how financially literate are you? If that extra change that you get from renting, you are using it to do lao lao. You buy shoes, You send money back to Nigeria so that they feel that you are an odogu. Or instead of buying slippers of 2,000, or instead of buying jackets of $100, you buy the best jacket for winter at $400. If you are using that spare money to to live the life, drink coffee at Starbucks instead of drinking Tim Hortons, you just enjoy yourself. That means you are eating your capital. So there is a huge argument between pros and cons. If you play the game well as a renter, you might make more than enough money in terms of building equity and also living within your means and the liquid cash you have in your pocket comparatively, maybe at the end of a 7-year period. So it is not a given that because you are building equity in quote with your own house and mortgage that you are making money. There's a high chance you might not be. So, like as I said, as a Nigerian, those 3 things are what you should look at before you decide, are you renting or are you buying? Right? So I think those are the 3 points that I want to mention for that.
Wow, Chibak, you made very good, very strong financial points, and it just goes to show that at the end of the day, it is dependent on 2 things. I got 2 things from what you said and what Emeka said. 2 things. First is each person's personal situation, and the second thing is your financial literacy. A combination of these 2 will make you bring out the best, whether you go for renting or you go for mortgaging. Now, if you don't have these 2 things well mixed, you will be in either one of these and not make good advantage of it. When you talked about the earnings that you save as a renter, what do you do with those earnings? If you're using them to buy liabilities, things that will suck money from you, you are back to square zero. But if you use it to buy assets that will yield something over time, then and again, you talked about the rule of 72. So that rule states that if the interest rate, whatever the interest rate in your investment is, if you divide 72 by that number, that will give you the number of years you will double that investment. So if I have $100 and I invest $100 and the interest rate is 10%, it means that in 7.2 years, I will earn my full $100. So, and if the interest is higher, if it's 20%, it means the number of years will be less. If it's 30 and whatever. So that makes perfect sense. Oh, thank you for that. Wow, that was very insightful for this. So people who are the to mortgage or to rent divide now can see that I don't know if there's any winner. I don't know if there's any winner. It's the case of the perspective and understanding. You want to say something?
Yes, I would say honestly, I have that financial breakdown is when you make a decision that is free from social entanglements. But the truth is that if you are coming here as a married person with children, there's a high chance that you end up mortgaging way faster than all this argument, because you are saying your own. Madam is thinking her own. So you can say all you want to say. You can bring the Excel sheet that shows the financial smartness of that your decision. But if your partner is saying, carry this your financial, get away from here, because my own is my mates that we came to Canada with, they have moved into their own houses. Some of them are making the same amount as you or as us. Some of them are maybe even making less than us. And you're here showing me graph, telling me the power of 72 multiplying income. I can't move around in this house. I cannot, my load is all over the place. I can't even unbox my load. I can't, like during winter is stressful. And these are also valid things, because if the partner you're living with is not happy, you too, you're not going happy now. And all this money you are making, if you make all the money in the world and you and your partner are not happy, what's the essence of it? So, in as much as nothing titillates men like practical, pragmatic analysis, this thing makes sense, this one don't make sense. When the other partners come into it, you have to also factor in that intangible value of the family, of what your spouse wants, of what makes sense to make your other partner happy. So it may not even boil down to, madam, let's do the graph of this thing. It will boil down to, if she's saying she's unhappy, or she's saying where we stay is not befitting our status in terms of our earnings and all that, you may end up that I want to stand here and tell you that if you are moving to Canada with your wife that was born in Nigeria, with our usual way of pressuring ourselves and setting standards for ourselves and wanting certain levels of comfort, you will eventually get mortgage. It might be in year 1, it might be in year 2, it might be in year 3, but you see mortgage, you go collect them. That's it.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Chibike. Emeka, before I go to the final round of questions for the night, for both of you, I saw your reaction to what Chibike said, and I don't know if you want to just touch on it a bit. He talked about the war, and I call it the war of rationality and logic on one side versus sentiments and emotions on the other side. And according to him, as a Nigerian, a married Nigerian coming from Nigeria, the side that belongs to the sentiments and emotions always wins that war. What's your take on that before I go on the final question?